After 2.5 years, we have finally decided to rip up the floors. So I'm gonna kind of like take you through the process of what all has got to be done and why we're doing it. Let's go. So this pile that I'm sitting on is the floors that's been ripped up so far. Not everything has been ripped up yet. We still got a ways to go. The reason why I've decided to pull these up is that they are bowling alley floors and they are quite slick. The previous owner had this as a skate rink. That's why we call it the Ramptech Rink. He purchased these floors from a bowling alley and moved them here. For skateboarding, whew, it's super, super slick. Below the floors is a very nice concrete foundation. It's smooth but not slick and perfect for skateboarding. What's very unfortunate about how these floors were put down is that they were nailed into the concrete. So the floors were countersunk, so the nail head sits not flush, but even below the surface of the wood. So there's no way to actually pry the nail out and then remove the surface. So what I've had to resort to is using crowbars to just pry them out. And sometimes the nail will come out, but most of the time the nail breaks through the underside of the floor. So that leaves us in an interesting predicament. That means there are about 10 to 14 nails still in the concrete once we've ripped up the floors. So once we rip it up, what we're left with is a whole bunch of nails. This one is actually a screw. Every now and then there'll be a random screw in there. So these are definitely difficult to get out. It's not just like simply taking the back of a hammer and just popping it out real quick. I've tried several different methods. One was to hammer it to make it bend back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until the top finally breaks off, but that takes a really long time. And there are thousands of nails that need to be pulled out. So the quickest way is just to hammer a crowbar in there and then with a lot of force, pop it out. Sometimes I can do it by hand, but the majority of the time, I just have to kick it with my foot and it goes flying. But when that happens, about 9 out of 10 times, we're left with a new problem. Insert our next issue. Now there's a huge gash in the concrete. So we're gonna be left with hundreds, if not thousands, of gashes in the concrete. So when you pop that out, it breaks apart a good bit. So that means that we have to patch that because I don't wanna be riding around on a surface with a ton of potholes for my wheel to go into. So to solve that issue, I tried a couple of different solutions. First, I went with this ready mixed concrete patch. So this is probably like the most convenient option, but I really just didn't like the results. It's already mixed. You can go ahead and just lay it down and it's good to go, but it takes a really long time to dry and I just don't feel like it's strong enough for what we need out here. This is what I settled on the second go around. It is quick setting cement by commercial grade Quickcrete, and it actually works really well. Now you do have to mix it. I tested it out, mixed a little bit and laid down a few patches and it's dry in like 10 to 30 minutes. It takes a little bit longer in here because it's so hot and humid in here. But it feels much stronger than the other material and I feel like it's gonna hold up a lot longer. So this section right here has been patched. I went ahead and did that. It has set and dried and it feels really good. Now the only issue is that it's much rougher than the original surface. So I haven't started yet, but I'm gonna try and figure out a way to get it to be as close as possible to the smoothness of this concrete. If I don't quite achieve the same level of smoothness, I'm okay with that because we are going to be painting the surface once everything is all patched up. Okay, and our last problem that we haven't discussed yet is the edges of the ramps. So most of the ramps we were able to get moved around so we could pull up all of the floor, but the fun box and the mini ramp, they're just too large to just move out of the way so we can get the floors up. And I'm definitely not going to disassemble all of this just to get the floors up. So the only thing that I can think of is to cut around the edges and just leave what flooring is underneath the ramps. So in order to do that, I'll probably just use a circular saw and set it to the depth of the floor, maybe a little bit less, so we can just cut around and pop these floors out. So long story short, we've definitely got our work cut out for us. There's still a ton to do in here, so cue the music and time lapses and montages and all of that stuff. Let's go. Here it is finally done. It took me about a month to do all this. I wasn't working on it every day, but it feels like I was working on it every day. This was such a huge undertaking. Now it's time to skate. But first, I'm gonna go through a few things that I learned through this whole process and some struggles that I went through. So I'm completely inexperienced in this area. I've never done anything like this, so mistakes were definitely made. The first mistake, which I've already talked about, was that pre-mixed stuff that I used for the concrete to fill in some of these holes. I really don't like how it turned out. It cracked a little bit. It's not hard at all. It's like kind of gummy. In the future, I may end up trying to figure out a way to rip that out and actually put concrete down. But as for right now, I'm gonna leave it how it is because it's only just like a few spots and it's not really in an area where you're gonna be affected by it that much. Second, and probably what I spent the most time on, would be this section right here behind me where I had put down plywood. This area in the middle actually had these like bowling ball pallets when we first got the building, and they were stacked 3 high. They're probably like 3 or 4 inches thick, and they were insanely heavy. It was like a center stage in this area. So a long time ago, I ripped all those up and ended up selling them and getting rid of them, but it left this bare concrete here, so I had to fill them with something. So I went the cheapest route, which was just to put down plywood, and it was actually the same exact thickness as all the other floor in here, so it worked out really well. I didn't really know how to apply it. I certainly couldn't shoot nails into the concrete, and I didn't know about drilling holes and putting in screws, so what I did is I initially tried to glue it down. So there was a ton of glue residue up underneath this surface. I ended up putting screws down after I realized that the glue was failing. So after I ripped those up and got the screws out, there was just a ton of glue all in this whole area. And I used a floor stripper, but it was not a glue stripper. So it did get the glue up, but the glue was just like super gummy and was just kind of like spreading around everywhere. So I had to mop and mop and mop to get it all up, and then also use a scraper to scrape what didn't come up. It was just a pain. I spent several days getting all of that glue up, but I was able to get most of it up, and it turned out pretty good. The next very difficult process that was a struggle was cutting the floors up around the fun box. I probably went through 4 or 5 blades doing that. It was very difficult. A couple of the blades that I used that I had laying around here literally hardly cut anything at all. I had one power saw completely die on me, just burnt out the motor completely. And then I finally did a little bit of research to find like, what's the toughest blades I can get. Got some of those, and they still like didn't do that well. It was crazy. I kept changing out the blades, and it was just a big struggle, but I got it all done. I really didn't figure out if there's a better way to do it. I think it was just the material that the floors were made out of. You would think that it would be wood, but it's actually some different type of composite. Only like that top layer is a thin strip of wood. The rest of it is, I don't know what it is, but it's very heavy, very durable, and was just completely destroying blades. You can see the patches just because it's not the same smoothness, but I've already rolled around a little bit and you can't really feel them at all. So super stoked about that. I probably ripped up thousands of nails and hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 holes were patched. Whew, so happy to be done with this project. Now I can get back to skating. It's been a whole month. Let's have a session. Thanks guys for sticking around for this Ramptech Rink video. Head on over to our YouTube and TikTok for a whole bunch of other content. We've got some tutorials, we've got sessions with the guys, sometimes we do interesting builds, and sometimes we just skate the Ramptech gear out here. Stop by and check it out, and remember, skate hard.